morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, November 30th, 2016. I am Dave Biddle. Very happy to be joined by Bucknuts contributor Jonah Booker. J-Book, of course, the latest college football playoff rankings were released last night. Ohio State stays at number 2 as expected, so you have Bama number 1, Ohio State number 2. Clemson moves up to number 3. Washington moves up to number 4. Michigan only falls to 5th. Wisconsin stays at 6th. Penn State stays at 7th. What do you make of the CFP rankings, my man?
It's somewhat expected. Ohio State being at number 2. The playoff committee, they've been pretty clear throughout this process that they view Ohio State as a major, there's a major gap between Ohio State and the other schools. So I'm not surprised about the number 1, number 2. I am somewhat surprised that Michigan only fell to number 5 because it creates a very interesting dynamic this weekend depending on the conference championship because Kirby Hook had mentioned several times that it's extremely razor thin between Michigan and Washington. Are they trying to squeeze Michigan into that 4-hole for a Nick Saban, Jim Harbaugh matchup? But as far as the first 2 and 3 with Clemson, I'm not very surprised about that. Penn State and Wisconsin, those 2 may be conference champs. That's on the outside looking in.
Is Ohio State a lock?
Ohio State's a lock. They're in there. The resume's too strong. They've beaten several top 25 teams. The schedule for Ohio State, it played out favorably this year. The playoff committee said they don't even consider Ohio State and Penn State in the same ballpark pretty much. There's no way with 1 week to go, Dave, that I can see Ohio State dropping from 2 out of the playoff. The question that Ohio State fans should be asking now is will they be playing in Atlanta against Alabama or will they be playing in Glendale, Arizona at the Fiesta Bowl, either at the 2 or number 3 seed? And right now, I don't think Ohio State's going to slide out of that 2 seed. The playoff committee, they desperately want to see that golden ticket matchup, an Urban Meyer versus a Nick Saban national championship rematch.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, J-Book, because I think not only is Ohio State a lock to make the playoff at this point, I think they're a lock to stay in either the number 2 seed or at the worst move down to the number 3 seed, which is irrelevant. They're going to be either number 2 or number 3. I just can't fathom them dropping any further than that. I think they're going to be in your neck of the woods. I'll see you down there. Glendale, Arizona. Obviously, we won't be staying in Glendale since that's like in the middle of nowhere, although I know they built it up a little bit since the last time I was there. But still, I think Ohio State is a lock to be 2 or 3. If Clemson wins the ACC title, we're going to see a Clemson-Ohio State rematch. And if it's Ohio State-Alabama in the title game, we're going to see Ohio State-Alabama rematch from a couple years ago. I just feel like Ohio State at this point, Jonah, is a lock for the 2 or the 3 seed.
Absolutely. And one thing that I had mentioned last night on Twitter, Dave, is I think this is an admission from the playoff committee that they made a mistake last year in not putting Ohio State in. How many times have they said you're going to have your Danny Dales and your Joey Galloways talking heads? You'll have your Mike and Mikes talking about how Ohio State may not be in because they're not the conference champion. But the thing that the playoff committee has said time and time and time again, and these people can't wrap their heads around it, is the conference championship is a potential tiebreaker if 2 teams are razor thin within each other. And they've said Ohio State is not Penn State to put the 4 best teams into the playoffs. Last year, they failed to do that. It's the same situation last year than it is this year. Ohio State was clearly one of the top 4 teams in college football last year. You give Urban Meyer with 13 NFL players a month to prepare, Ohio State could have easily beat Alabama if they were playing at the top of their game. And last year, the playoff committee made a mistake, and the ratings were atrocious. And Penn State fans, they're going to argue, they're going to scream, they're going to fuss that, hey, we beat Ohio State head-to-head. We should be in at minimum at the 4 seed. But you know what? Beat Pitt. You lost to Pitt. You can thank Michigan State from last year from getting boat raced by Alabama for one of the reasons why the playoff committee may be skeptical about putting you in that 4-hole.
I'm just glad we're having this discussion after Ohio State's close win over Michigan. That really could have went either way, taking all biases aside. It's just we could be talking about who's Ohio State going to play in the Citrus Bowl instead of the college football playoff right now. So it's as usual, it is a great time to be a Buckeye. Speaking of that team up north, last night, somehow, and I made this joke on Twitter last night. It's not even really a joke. People took it as a joke. The Big Ten awards never fail to be hilarious in terms of unintentional comedy. They're not trying to be funny. They just are. Jabril Peppers. I'll finally pronounce his name right. Jabril Peppers is Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. I cannot even fathom this. He's not the best defensive player on his team. He would be not even, fourth best defensive player on Ohio State's team. It's just name recognition. He should be Big Ten, kickoff and punt returner of the year, if anything. How is Jabril Peppers Defensive Player of the Year?
That was a disgrace, Dave. There is no way in hell that guy should be Defensive Player of the Year. His stats are subpar. Don't get me wrong, he's an athletic player, he's a good player, but as far as his overall game, he wasn't dominating. I look at it like this, Dave. If you take Jabril Peppers off Michigan's team, they're still going to win. When you think about a defensive player, you think about, hey, if this guy go down, will that defense struggle? Now, you take Malik Hooker off Ohio State, we're in trouble because he is a key cog in that defense. Jabril Peppers is barely putting up stats. He's putting up four tackles a game he's averaging. Yes, he does 10 different positions as a gimmick. He does the Wildcat, but that award was given to him based off hype and name recognition alone. If you're going to give it to a Michigan player, I would give it to Jordan Lewis over Jabril Peppers all day, every day. At least Lewis is out there producing on the field. He's locking people up at corner. Peppers isn't doing anything. He's a liability in the run game. He's atrocious when he's playing man-to-man coverage. He couldn't even catch a 4.8 JT Barrett on a breakaway run in the clutch of the game. So he had one interception that was a lucky tip pass to him in his entire career.
JT's made a habit of burning Peppers in the running game. Did it last year, did it this year. One thing the Big Ten voters did not get wrong was at least they didn't have Isaiah Prince on the All-Big Ten team. My gosh, I love the kid. I want him to do well. Seems like a nice kid. Sophomore. He was a big-time recruit. He's just one of the worst starting offensive linemen I've seen at Ohio State, though. It's still young in his career. It's probably not even his fault. He should just not be starting. There should be somebody else that's better than him. He should be a backup. So I want to get that out there. It's not his fault that the coaches think he's one of the best. Maybe Malcolm Pridgeon will be able to get healthy and come back toward the end of the year. Maybe Brandon Bowen will be able to keep working up and maybe eventually beat out Isaiah Prince. But, what can be done at this late stage of the season with Isaiah Prince, J-Book?
I'm just going to keep it all the way real with you, Dave. He's not a tackle. He's a guard playing tackle. He's out of position. He doesn't have the feet to handle that edge there. His hand placement is terrible. He's very stiff at the knees. The kid is a nice guy. Don't get me wrong. And it's, like you said, it's not his fault that the coaches have him out there. He should be kicked inside, which I think he would excel much more in a role grader type of mentality. But he just cannot get it done. I mean, how many times against, what was it, the college football stats or something? Said he's given up 46% pressures against Michigan, Penn State, and Michigan State. You just cannot have that. He's a liability out there. As far as the bowl practice, I don't know. This guy has to take 100 snaps at setting his edge and pass rushing and just continue to rep and get practice. You got a month off, Isaiah. We're going to need something from you. He cannot, if Ohio State plays Alabama, he cannot be left alone out there going against Deshaun Hand or Tim Williams, those type of guys at Alabama, even against Clemson. But it's going to be interesting. I really hope that he can develop during this bowl season. But the main thing that frustrates me about him is you just don't see that dog in him. You just don't see him out there just getting nasty. He'll take a beating and things will start to snowball on him instead of getting mad about the situation and just try to manhandle somebody with his size. I got to see a little bit more toughness out of him at that position.
That's why I'm concerned about the idea that he's not a tackle, that he's a guard, and I trust you on that. You know your stuff. I mean, you played D1 football, college football yourself. My concern is, though, we've seen tackles over the years that are just can get by with being kind of finesse because they're such great athletes and have such good feet. I mean, he doesn't seem like the type of guy that can move inside. He's not that stout. He's not that strong. He's a guy that if he can't play tackle, can he really be that good of a guard? We're talking about a guy that's 6'7", 305 pounds, long arms. Again, you look at him, you know, he doesn't have much muscle definition at all. I mean, he seems like a tackle or nothing to me. So if he's best suited for guard, does that mean he's best suited for the bench?
I mean, I tell you who he reminds me of, Dave. He reminds me of Brian Browning from several years ago. Remember when they tried to kick Browning out at tackle and it didn't work out very well, and he ended up being a little bit better? Well, yeah, he's much shorter, but as far as the demeanor, how he goes about his business, I mean, Browning wasn't the nastiest person on there, but once they moved him back inside, he would at least excel somewhat. I mean, at tackle, he just can't get it done at tackle, Dave. You can't move him. He's definitely not a left tackle. The right side teams are switching their best defensive linemen over him. They're stunting and they're twisting and they're sending blitz his way because he has issues picking up the blitz on the delay. So the best sequence for him as far as his career in Ohio State's offense is he has to be kicked inside unless you see dramatic growth from him from that position. And what I've seen this year, I'm very skeptical you're going to see that. So Pridgeon's injury was a huge deal for Ohio State this year. And it's going to be interesting because Ohio State has a tendency to really give the nod to veterans who've played extensive minutes when it comes to position battles. It's going to be interesting if they're going to allow that to be an open position with Pridgeon and some of the freshmen that are coming in.
And if Pridgeon can't come back this year, I mean, Urban never said he was completely out for the season, just out for the regular season. Now we're not in the regular season, so, you know, we haven't got a chance to speak with Urban Meyer this week. When we do, I'll make sure I will ask him about Malcolm Pridgeon, whether he can come back. And, you know, if Isaiah Prince can't get the job done and Malcolm Pridgeon can come back, then it's up to Brandon Bowen to step up and at least push Isaiah Prince for that job. Hey, before I let you go, a question a lot of Buckeye fans are asking now. I mean, everybody wants to know about the college football playoff. But other than that, people are wondering who might leave early. You know, I think the Buckeyes could be gutted in the secondary as far as players leaving early for the NFL, Jay Book. But just, you know, offensively and defensively overall, you know, go through some of the guys you think you might leave early for the NFL draft.
Beginning of the season, I thought you were going to see quite a bit of guys leaving. But now, some guys didn't have the year that many thought they were going to have. Raekwon said that he's still undecided. I think he goes. Malik Hooker said he's 100% coming back. But I caution people, if he goes into the playoffs and he balls out and he's getting first-round grades, there's going to be a lot of people that tell him, son, go get paid. I think Marshawn Latimer's definitely gone. Curtis Samuel is now getting mocked in the first 2 rounds in several latest mock drafts. So if he comes back with a first 2-round draft grade, I think he could be gone. Billy Price, I think he'll be back. He loves being a college student in the Buckeye. You really don't see guards leaving early. I think that's probably about it right there. You're probably only going to see a few. I think Tyquan Lewis is a candidate to go. He's really picked up his game. I would tell him if you're getting a top 3-round grade, you should go, especially with his injury history. Sam Hubbard was a guy that I thought if he had a breakout year at the beginning of the season, he was a candidate to come back. But Jalen Holmes outplayed him this year, so I think you're going to see Hubbard back, and you have Hubbard and Holmes and Bosa and Cooper and the other 5 stars coming in as your primary defensive ends. As I say that, I just smile because how stacked that position is going to be. But I think those are going to be the main ones that leave.
Great insights as always from Jonah Booker. Really appreciate it, Jay Book. You can catch his column every week on Bucknuts outside Columbus. You can catch him all over the Front Row message board. You can catch him on Twitter at JBook37. Again, that's at JBook37. So thank you, Jonah, and thank you to all the listeners out there for tuning in the show. I appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great day. Let's hear some Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.